Well, the cancer journey is a well-travelled one, and it puts people under a lot of pressure. But, like they say, sometimes pressure makes the best diamonds, and you're just about to meet one. Hello, my name is Mark Bunting. Welcome to Daffy to Daffy. It's a little podcast with the real stories that turn that nefarious, obnoxious, greedy cancer into inspirational, real practical inspiration for everyday people. And I'd like you to meet one of those most inspiring people, a friend of mine by the name of Tracey Hancock. Tracey, welcome to Daffy to Daffy.
Thank you very much, Mark. Great to be here.
Now, small disclaimer, Tracey and I actually know each other. I first met Tracey when I was teaching her, well, helping her with her speeches. And she had a bit of a story to tell, and I was so floored by the story. Very little coaching was required. It's absolutely brilliant. And you're still telling that message. You're still speaking that story.
I am indeed.
Yeah.
Yes.
I tell anyone your story as much as I can, but never as well as you tell it. So let's take it right back to, 2014. Should we go back that far?
So 2014, when I discovered a tiny little lump in my neck, very small, about the size of the top of my finger. Very next day, took myself off to the doctor and said, I have a lump. And that started a 9-month journey of a range of tests, a range of diagnoses, and a whole lot of things happening. But it really came to a crux in December of that year when I went, you know what, we are getting nowhere. We need to up the game and really get stuck into finding out what was wrong. So I was very sick come that December.
So what made you think you were getting nowhere? Obviously, you were getting physically more and more unwell, and the doctor was, as you say, getting nowhere?
Yeah, so they were at a bit of a loss as to what was going on. So there was a whole lot of things suggested, but nothing really seemed to fit. So come December, we went, that's it, we need to bring out some big guns in terms of some tests. So that really got us cracking.
Yeah.
And then into February the following year, that's when I got the diagnosis.
Righto. So were they, do you think, trying to keep the bad news away from you? Did they always have it in the back of their head, do you think? Or they just didn't know?
I think part of it is just the general busyness. Like I'm just another person coming through the door. So what I found was really important was the need to advocate for myself and say, hey, look, hang on, here's the symptoms. So I'm a big fan of writing everything down. So I would turn up and say, this is what I'm noticing. These are new. This is different. So really getting active in that self-leadership approach, because I knew that what I was experiencing wasn't normal for me and what was being suggested. And I think it's a real partnership. So they were giving me some suggestions and I was going, yeah, here's my symptoms, so let's work this through. So
you didn't do that awful thing and Google it, did you?
No, I did not Google it.
Good idea.
Not at that point. I did need to use Google when they gave me the diagnosis because I went, how on earth do I spell that?
Yeah, okay. So, but then you Googled it, and what happened when you Googled it? It must have been horrific.
Well, certainly a lot of information came up, but I am a life coach. So if there's one thing I know, it's to pause and breathe.
Right.
Like, just be wary of not diving down a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
So I took a step back from Google and went, you know what? When it comes to this journey, I will choose the people that I will listen to, and Google's not one of them.
Nice. Now, that is actually quite a crux to your story, isn't it? You will choose who you listen to, and you'll choose what you say. And if you like, it's a language diet, which we're going to get into fairly shortly. But just let's keep going chronologically, because it was quite the part where you go into the hospital and into the ward, that's quite, if you like, jarring. So
that story that you're referring to happened in my 20s when I was very unwell. And what I realised back then was, if I don't advocate for myself, I'm going to get lost in the system. And I noticed that particularly because there were some other people in the ward with me who were really struggling. And when the doctors would leave, I'd say to them, hey, how are you going? What's going on? And they were so worried and they were scared about asking questions. And so because they were an older generation than me, I got my dad to come in and have a chat with them, and we gathered their questions, and so we had their questions asked of the doctors.
Oh, wow.
So what happened for me then when I was diagnosed with cancer, I drew on those learnings from when I was in my 20s, went, right, okay, I've got to put myself in a really strong position of self-leadership. Now, that's really hard when you're already unwell.
Yeah.
And, you're tired and you're stressed and you're feeling all the feels.
Yeah.
To advocate for yourself. But I really drew on, I needed to be asking questions, and I needed to figure out who were going to be my go-to people.
Did the doctors end up having to get PTSD after being your doctor?
They did see me coming because I would have my notebooks. They go, "Oh, Tracey, you've got your notebook again." I go, "Yes, I've got questions and I've got facts, I've got test results. So let's have a look." See them all
outside the wall going, 1 potato, 2 potato, 3 potato, you got it. Yeah. Where you go.
And I think to give some more context to that, as well as the experience I'd had in my 20s, which wasn't cancer related, I had a background of strategic and business planning.
Okay.
So my go-to, of course, was going to be more of a structured planning approach. And I think that was really useful because one of the things I think we forget when we're unwell is what are our strengths and how can we use them. So I dove straight into what are my questions? What are we trying to achieve here?
Right,
so, yeah.
right. Yeah, I want to get into that in just a wee second about how people can actually have that resource ready to use at a time when they feel the most vulnerable. Because you're right, it is the worst time to try and suddenly draw out this magic resource. And yet we find that there's a commonality in these stories that people seem to be able to do it. They seem to dig really deep and find something they didn't know they had before. Have you found that in your travels or the people you've met through your speeches?
100%. Like so often people will say, "Oh, I could never cope. If that happened to me, I could never cope."
Yeah.
But when you're in the situation, you really don't have much of a choice. Now, it can be really hard and really overwhelming and really scary. And that's where I think, there's so many resources and people that you can turn to, which is really helpful.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you can, and hopefully, if you're surrounded by people who can remind you of who you are and what you know.
Yeah.
What can you draw on? Whether it's your faith, for some people that's really important. For me it was, my planning background and also my life coaching.
Yeah, and we will talk, again, we're going to talk about it a lot later, but we're going to talk about that later as well, because it's a fascinating direction that your life has taken. So let's go back to the story. So you got the diagnosis, you hit Google, you started to sweat, I would imagine, and worry and think, I've got this and this and this as well. Is that how it worked?
I started to sweat more than I already was, because that was unfortunately one of the symptoms.
Oh, no.
So, backing away from Google was a smart move, I think.
Nice, and probably still is. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so then what happened after the diagnosis?
Yeah, so February I got the initial diagnosis. So,
and what were you diagnosed with specifically?
So nodular sclerosis, Hodgkin lymphoma.
Oh, so is that the same as Hodgkin's disease, or?
No, don't think so, Mark.
Just named after a similar sort of a fella.
Pass.
Okay.
Pass. You'd have to get some.
I'll Google it. That's what I'll do. Yeah,
you
okay.
Get some advice on that.
Yeah.
So it was quite a mouthful to say, and fair to say, sort of when that diagnosis came through in February, March we were into the PET CT scan to confirm staging, straight into having a port inserted into my chest.
Wow.
3 days after the port.
What's a port? What is a port?
So the port goes in under your skin. It's kind of like a plug. So then when you go for chemo, they plug you in.
Oh, okay.
It's a really handy way to have chemo.
Okay.
Because of chemo's administered in different ways. So in my case, for the treatment I was getting, that was the preferred option.
Yep.
So you go and then they plug you in.
Okay.
And the chemo goes in through there.
Okay, so you just keep this in for the course of for the length of your treatment, and which in your case was how long?
It was 8 doses of chemo, so I think that was over about 4 months.
4 months. So you had a plug in there.
Yeah, and that actually stayed in there right through until the end of my radiation treatment as well. Yeah.
Tell me about chemo. I mean, let's not pull any punches. What is it like?
It's really awful.
Yeah.
It really is awful. And I recall the first day, actually, I'll just share this with you. The first day that I went there, I remember getting at Waikato Hospital to the double doors, and you can see inside. So people were already there getting their treatment. And I remember standing there and feeling like every friend, family member, ancestor, and more were like standing there with me going, we got this.
Wow.
Like just that moment of gathering that strength and going, you know what? This can be a ride. It's not going to be pretty, but we're here with you.
Yeah, lovely.
And it was just incredible.
And that wasn't the first treatment?
That was the first treatment.
Wow.
So took the step in and still a bit battered and bruised from having the port put in and then straight into getting the connection. And, it was rugged. I had a protocol where there's 4 drugs going into you over, I think I was there for about 6 to 7 hours each time.
6 to 7 hours?
Yeah, it's quite lengthy.
Yeah. And is it just like dripped in? Is that how it works?
Yeah, dripped in. And you can see it going in, and there's some different colours and some different things happening, and you experience different sensations. But again, I guess because of my training as a life coach, I'm like, just breathe.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
breathe.
What did you notice about people? Like, was it an open ward with other people at the same time?
Yeah,
Wow,
yeah. So you're surrounded by people. Some will be lying in a bed, some will be sitting. They might have support people. So I was very clear for my journey. I had my partner at the time dropped me off. He stayed with me until the port and everything were hooked up. He'd make me a cup of tea, make sure I was comfortable, and then I sent him on his way.
Yeah. And you're sitting in a big like lazy boy chair, aren't you?
Yeah,
Is that right?
yeah. And I sat there and we went through the treatment. And then I had a friend who would meet me out the front of the hospital. And it was about a 30-minute drive home. And I was fairly okay for that 30 minutes. I'd get home and I just would take myself off to bed.
Right.
So what happened after that first one is I just knew the routine and I knew how to flow with the experience. But that first one was rugged.
So you're stuck in that chair for 8 hours. Is that how it works?
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, you can get up.
So you can go to the loo and stuff.
You've got to go to the loo.
That was a question on everybody's mind. I had to go there. Okay. Yeah.
You can.
You're
get
right.
up. And you get up. And look, I treated it like going to work.
Right.
So I would pack my bag, and I had talked to some people I knew who had been through cancer treatment, and they said, here are some of our favourite things that we would take. And I went, right. So I pack my bag and head off to work.
You see, I'm not saying you're lucky, but you're very emotionally equipped, right? Your mind and your heart are working in the same, and it's one of the many, many things I admire about you. But in that open ward where there's, 5, 6, 7, 8 other people doing the same thing who aren't as well equipped, how do they cope? How were they? Did you talk to them? Did they, get to know them? What?
Yeah, so I did get to know some of the people, and it was really hard to start with. And I think the more you could create a space that felt safe for you. So if there were special things that you could bring, if you wanted to bring a support person, so if, your favourite music, put on your headphones.
Right.
So for some people that can help block out. So again, think about when you're in situations where you're uncomfortable, if you're really stressed, what helps you? Your favourite blanket. I always took a cup. So I had a crockery cup with me, and that gave me a real sense of strength and comfort holding my cup.
How do you stop other people getting into your mental space in that situation? Because you'd forgive anyone else for putting out a bad vibe and feeling revolting and feeling awful at that time. I mean, people must be at their worst. How do you keep the energy and the vibe going in your zone?
So I think for me it was really around just respecting that everyone's on their own journey and everyone's going to go into it with a different set of skills and experiences. So just being respectful and going, you know what, they're having a bad day.
So did anyone get in your space and your group?
Look, a couple of times, but again, like it is a hard environment. So just that compassion, and I think you do also see real kindness coming through, like from some quite surprising people. That I remember my first chemo session. I sat down, and then a chap came and sat down beside me, and he said, "Oh, I'm just waiting for my my bodyguard." And I thought, "Oh,
Your bodyguard."
Your bodyguard." And I thought, "Wow, you must be quite famous, and I don't recognise you. I'm not sure I don't know what to say next because I've clearly not recognised you." And some prison guards came in.
Oh, wow.
And the gentlemen and the prison guards were amazing.
Yeah.
Like, they'd go, "Hey, your first time here?" And they shared some tips, and they made sure I got a fresh cup of tea.
Wow.
So people are really, like, they're as giving as they can be in the situation.
Right, yeah. And there'll be a closeness that you'd never strike with anybody else. I mean, this is, you're right on the edge, aren't you?
Yeah. I used to, when we got to radiation, I really enjoyed my very early morning appointments because there were a lot of men there getting their prostate cancer radiation at that time.
Right.
We just had the best
How
group.
could you possibly enjoy that? This is going to get really good.
We would just have the best banter
Yeah.
because we all went, it's a shitty situation. You can't sugarcoat it. It's not fun.
Quite literally a shitty situation.
And yet we would sit there and, we'd share stories and just support each other, and the banter was amazing.
Awesome.
They would often tell me off and say, "That's too much laughter," because they, of course, got to have a full bladder for their treatment. And they'd go, no more laughing.
No more laughing.
And I
I
know,
have nothing to offer.
and I know people will go, "How can you possibly be laughing about the situation?"
Yeah.
But one of the things that I did right from the start was go, you know what, if every day I can just find one small thing that brings me joy, that makes me smile, then that's going to help, because it's a tough grind some days.
So you went through the treatment. You went through, how many treatments did you say you went through?
8 chemos.
8 chemos?
Yeah.
Did it work?
Yes, it did. And really fortunately, because after the first treatment, the team said, we can tell it's working, and certainly I could feel it. So this is quite a funny thing, because you could literally see the tumour in my neck and shoulder, and so I could feel it, and I could feel it shrinking.
Oh, wow.
It was a really unusual situation. So yes, we noticed a difference straight away, which was quite good, because there was a slight issue with my diagnosis.
What was that?
So I wasn't aware until we got to radiation that it had actually been, the cancer had got into my bones.
Oh.
But at the original staging, it hadn't been picked up until a later date, and I wasn't aware of that. So the fact that the chemo worked was really good, because had it not, in hindsight, they said I probably had 4 to 6 weeks to live.
Wow. Now, that is something I need to pick you up on. Okay. Who has the right to tell you how long you've got to live?
Oh, Mark, that's such an interesting question.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a realness to the situation. Like, you need to know your diagnosis, and you need to know what's going on. I think the way it's delivered needs to be considered, and the support that gets wrapped around people needs to be considered.
Yeah. How does someone deliver that news, and how do you take that news? How actually does that happen at the moment?
I can only speak from my own experience.
Yes, of course. Yeah, absolutely.
So I actually found out sitting with the radiation oncologists when they said, we recommend you have radiation because it was in your bone. And my partner at the time and the nurse coordinator that had gone through the journey with me were both sitting there, and I looked at them and they were grey. They looked like, my partner at the time looked like he was about to pass out. So he's a trained physiotherapist, and I'm not looking at him going, oh, there is something here that I don't know.
Oh, so they all knew.
So they got immediately from what they said that actually I had been in pretty big trouble.
Wow.
And so then the lead radiation oncologist said, in your bone, 4 to 6 weeks to live had you not reacted well to the chemo.
Goodness me.
And that was really, that was quite a moment.
And these are the defining moments, aren't they? They're the ones that make you go, right, language is everything. I really want to segue into that, because this is the big thrust of your entire delivery now, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Language is so key. And it was really interesting because, in that moment when they told me, they said, so that's why we recommend the radiation. So you'll want to go home and you'll want to talk to people and you'll probably want to look it up. And I went, no, you guys are the experts.
Right.
That's your diagnosis. Then we go to the next step. And they're
Right.
like, are you sure? I was like, yeah, I'm sure. And we will manage this. It is just another bit of this journey. And I could choose to get all really pissed off, because, if there's any time to get pissed off, that would be it.
Yeah.
And I went, let's figure out process-wise how you can fix that. But
This was in the same time that you found out about the bone cancer?
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah.
Because honestly, I felt like I was in a different, a different lifetime.
Yeah.
Because you're in this journey.
So you took over, though. That's the exciting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so it's like, if I'm committing to yes to chemo, yes to radiation, then I'm not mucking around. Like, I am in here and I'm giving it everything I can give it.
Because that's the full banana, isn't it? That's chemo and radio. Did you have that at the same time? Or?
You finish chemo and then you get a bit of a break just to recoup, and then you go into radiation.
Okay.
And so you're right, like, language throughout this is really important. And I think, a few of the key things were, my philosophy is I'm moving towards health, not away from sickness. So a lot of the languaging is around I'm fighting cancer.
Say that again.
For me, it was around moving towards health, not away from illness.
Right. So you don't even give illness the oxygen in your head.
No, I treat it like I've got a diagnosis, there's something wrong. Now, I know that this will, for some people, it won't even land, and it gets some criticism, and other people go, oh, I get that. Mm-hmm. Because what I wanted to do was give my attention to what can I do to be as healthy and as strong as possible, even on the days when I feel shit. Mm-hmm. Like, how can I be as strong and as healthy as possible? I'll get up and wash my face and clean my teeth.
That's an interesting one, isn't it? So you're working on the things you can control, that are in your circle of control, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're not saying, I'm going to beat cancer with words, right? You're just saying you're going to give your environment every possible chance to be right so that someone can give me a hand with this thing. Is that right?
Absolutely, that's it.
Yeah.
So I acknowledged the truth of the situation. Like, there was no denying. Like, I was in a bad situation.
It is what it is. Yeah.
And it wasn't fun. And there were lots of glitches. Like, partway through my chemo treatment, my port came out.
Oh, great. That's all you need.
Yeah, and so they give you 3 options. They go, ports come through your skin, Could get an infection. Could die from the infection.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can't really continue with the chemo like that. I was like, right, and what are my other options? Well, you have the surgery and you might get an infection and you might die, or you might bleed out because you're partway through chemo and your blood's thin.
Another loving option. Yeah.
And so again, it's just, okay, well, I'm in this far. What's my best course of action? Surgery, right, let's just get on with it. Like,
it's incredible for such an emotional, limbic type person like yourself. You went into complete rational mode, didn't you? You went right into your head.
So I still gave my feelings space, but I really worked on, okay, what's the best next step to take?
Right.
How do I support myself? Who do I need to have involved in that? So my haematologist was amazing because, you know, he knew if I had questions, I'd get in touch. My nurse coordinator, if I had questions, I'd ask her. I was working with a nutritionist that I had found in Australia, so I would ask him. So very much about, this is hard, I'm feeling like shit. There are days when I just burst into tears. So I don't want anyone to think like I'm a robot and went through it. I never experienced bad days.
Of course, yeah.
But when there were decisions to be made, I'd go, what's the advice I've been given? What's the best next step?
So a big part of your team, you talked about your haematologist, your nutritionist,
the nurse coordinator.
Yeah, butcher, the baker, the candlestick maker, everybody that's involved. Where do you fit into that as a part of your treatment? Like, do you let yourself cry? Do you let yourself release those emotions? How do you do that?
100%. Big on naming the emotion. I'm frustrated, I'm pissed off.
Naming the emotional.
Yeah. So name the emotion and go, you know what, I am pissed off.
Righto, good. Yeah.
Today's been a bad day. Today sucked.
Yeah,
like
okay.
And, you know, I'd cry, I'd be angry, and I'd go, okay, cool, I'm done that. Now what's next? Because I knew that if I got stuck in the emotion, I just wouldn't be able to help myself as well as I could.
So you could almost climb out of yourself, look at yourself and go, okay, and give yourself permission to feel like crap for a day. Yeah. Did you say to yourself, okay, well, there's only a certain amount I can do of this. You know, if I keep feeling like crap all the time, I'm going to feel it's going to start harming my treatment.
Yeah, 100%. And so I would start to look for patterns. So one of the things I did in my journal was I would look for patterns. So I'm a woman and I also was getting periods through that time. So I knew when that was happening. So I knew that, there's going to be an extra emotional hit there.
Yeah.
And I knew that after chemo, if I just gave myself a day and a half to know that I'm going to feel awful, just go to bed. Go to bed.
So you don't harm yourself or anyone else.
Yeah. You know, we just said no visitors during that day and a half.
Yeah.
Sure, check in by text or message my partner at the time,
Yeah.
but no visitors. I'm just going into my bubble. So I didn't force myself to do things that took so much energy or just made me feel even worse.
So we went through it. We went through the radio, chemo, went through the radio. At what point did you get the clear? Or are you clear? Or?
Yeah, I am clear. And as I said, like right from the very early stages of the chemo, there were definite signs that we were doing good, which was great. And then I had a scan a couple of months after the radiation finished and they went, can't see a trace.
No way.
No trace of the cancer.
Yeah.
And so that was, 9 years ago? Oh, yeah, 9 years.
And did you let yourself feel elated, or did you say, right, we shall manage this between 10 and 11 tomorrow? I've got the spot in the diary for it.
No, of course I allowed myself to feel it.
Yeah.
It was an incredible moment. And there were so many people who helped me through that journey.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I had thought of, and this won't surprise you as soon as you know me, is I had thought about the transition. Because you go through this intense period of time surrounded by people who are there to care for you, who are taking temperatures. So, you know, off my own bat throughout treatment, I would book into my local GP and the nurse would run a series of tests, you know, temperature, blood pressure and stuff, just to check if I was all right. So, you know, I'd had this whole group of people who'd been helping me.
Yeah.
And then I was going to come to a point where you just go, it stops.
And there's no one there anymore.
And there's no one there.
You're right.
It's
Team
so
Tracey is now
frightening.
you.
Yeah, it's so frightening because you finish the treatment, you go into hospital every day for radiation.
Wow, that's a...
And then you'd go to your last day and they say, do you want to keep your mask that we have, they used for my type of radiation, they had a mask that attached you to the table. They go, do you want to keep your mask? I'm like, oh, no, thank you.
That is a whole new podcast, transitioning out. That's really cool. We must get you back to get into that, actually. But I want to just sort of do some housekeeping. We are sitting here in the Cancer Society Lions Lodge, which is a beautiful facility, and broadcasting here. And you yourself have now taken what you did during that, and you've made it into a living, basically. I mean, I'm one of your customers, one of your clients. I've got my own little Tracey Hancock planner and that sort of stuff. You've turned planning into quite the art form, really.
Yeah, so I took all my corporate experience and I want people to learn some of these skills so that whatever we face, we've got a way to navigate through it, because I think that can really throw us. Like, there's no class in school that says, here, this is what you do when you're diagnosed with cancer. But if we can learn some skills and remember our strengths. So, as I said, mine were planning and the use of language, because I'm an NLP trained coach.
Okay.
So I could draw on those strengths and those skills, but it's at the worst possible time. And it's really hard to do that when you're already very stressed and sick.
So get in early. Can I just do a small commercial plug here for traceyhancock.co.nz?
.com.
.com. Ooh, .com. That's very big and important, yes. She has these very, very cool planners, and if you do want to have a look at this, it certainly changed my life, and call it preventive action in a way. I guess I'm one of the lucky ones, I guess. But you're one of the strong ones. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. And it's neat to be able to call you my friend too. It's we have these coffees, and they tend to go for a long time, actually, and because we just enjoy this kind of bounce, really, don't we? It's final question. You always said to me that you weren't going to let this define you, but has it made you?
So I don't want to wear cancer as an identity. It's certainly part of my story, but I want it to stay in the box where it belongs. So have I learnt and grown from it? Absolutely, of course. And I can talk about it. I don't want to keep living back in it. I want to look forward. I'll take the learnings, I'll take the growth. I'm looking forward. I just want to live every day as well as I can, knowing that, I have those regular checkups to see how I'm going. And maybe one day one of those checkups will come back and go, it's not so good. But until then, I'm just going to live every day as well as I can. I really like it. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here. Again, if you're looking for the Tracey's planner, it's traceyhancock.com. And big thanks to the Waikato Bay of Plenty Cancer Society for putting this podcast on. It's called Daffy to Daffy. And the idea of this really is, cancer affects so many people in this country. But there are so many amazing stories that come through of resilience, of love, of togetherness, of support for each other. And we really want you to feel you're not alone. There are a lot of people going through it, and it's different for everybody. Your story is just as important as anybody else's, and this has just been one of them. My name is Mark Bunting. This has been Daffy to Daffy, and as they say, until next time, that's all, folks.